Hi friends, I'm Joe, and this is episode number 178 of the Dekahedron RPG podcast, and I'm calling this one the Halted Game Fallacy. This episode was inspired by a comment left by Jason of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. He left it on my episode about message that I did for RPG A Day 2025. And later on, Runeslinger of Casting Shadows said that the comment that Jason was referring to was his. But this is what Jason had to say. I recently heard someone, I can't remember who, say messages as props are great, but it is better to read to the player before giving it to them, because if you hand it to them to read, it brings the game to a halt while they handle and read it. I've also heard people say this about, PCs buying gear, that shopping halts the game. I've also heard this about putting traps in the dungeon, right? Because then the players get weary and they test everything and it halts the game. Needless to say, as you can guess by the title of this episode, I disagree. These are all examples of players engaging with the game world in character. This is role play at its highest. These are role-playing games. This isn't the game coming to the halt. This is the game going full bore. When people say that these things are halting the game, I think in their mind, the game is just a series of events or encounters or scenes to be checked off one by one until you reach the big bad at the end. And I guess that's a valid style of play for them, not for me. For me, the real game is the events that unfold. It's the players using their agency and making decisions and taking actions and the way the world reacts to those decisions and those actions. That is the game to me. I guess what I'm saying is that I have a very player-centric style of GMing. And I'm not one of those people that thinks that the GM is a narrator or a storyteller or anything like that. I think the GM is a set designer, that the GM's job is to lay out the set, the world, the characters in it, opportunities to get in trouble, opportunities to get out of trouble, and that it's the players that come in onto the set, they play their roles, and they make things happen. The story follows the players. So maybe, just maybe, those people who are saying that when you hand the players a message that their characters found, that halts the game, maybe that's the style of GM that runs the other kind of game, that runs that linear plot. And that GM is only trying to go from scene 1 to scene 2 to scene 3, then to act 2, scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. And the player's actions don't really matter because he's mapped out the scene in his mind and that's where it's going to next. So by giving them this thing to read, it's a waste of time because they can't make any actionable decision on that. Maybe. But that's very much a straw man argument, and I know that because I don't know what's really in the mind of people that think handing you a note, the player a note, is halting the game. If you are one of those people, drop me a line, send me feedback, let me know. I truly want to know. But straw man or not, I am going to prove why I think handing the players a note does not stop the game. So like I said in that episode, this is a technique that I really like. I like it a lot. I use it a lot. And I'm going to use one example that I can think of, that I can remember as an example for the rest of this episode. And in that session, the players had come across the office of a dead necromancer. Kind of ironic if you think about it, a dead necromancer. Anyway, he was sitting at a desk right there, and one of the players are like, I searched the desk. I'm like, okay, you find a whole bunch of miscellaneous papers and a bunch of magic theory that goes way over your head that you just don't get. But you also have this letter, and I hand him the letter. As soon as I hand him that letter, I turn to the next player and I say, okay, Andy's character is reading the letter. What do you do? And in this particular case, I think the player said, I'm searching the body. And I'm like, okay, well, it's a skeleton. He's wearing soiled robes of a deep blue color, but it's, covered in dust, and up on it are silver emblems of astrological symbols and stuff like that. Are you touching the body, by the way? And immediately the player goes, As soon as the player says, that means they need to think about something, right? And that's fine. So it's great, you think about that, and, just go to the third player. What are you doing? And you just go from there. So in that example, how is the game coming to a halt? Yeah, sure, Andy's reading the letter, but there's 3 other players at the table. You just take the spotlight, you take it from Andy, and you go to the next player, and you go to the next player, just like you do with any other session. Nothing has come to a halt. All right, but let's say that the player says, well, I want to see what the letter says too. Great. You can wait for him to be done, and you go to the next player, and you keep doing that. Let's give the naysayers the benefit of the doubt. Let's say none of the players want to move forward until Andy's done with that letter. Well, it didn't happen in this case, but in other cases, maybe Andy's character is going to read that aloud to everybody. So what's the difference from giving it to Andy to read aloud versus me reading it out loud? Nothing. The game didn't come to a halt. Maybe Andy's going to read it and then he's going to summarize it. That's fine. Maybe each one of them wants to read it. I've seen that one a lot. Well, Andy's going to read it and then he's going to pass it on to Becky or whoever, and she's going to read it and she's going to pass it on to Charlie. And then, as they read it, they're going to be discussing it. Oh, what does he mean by a new method? Or what does he mean by an army, And they're going to be having this conversation back and forth. The game isn't stopped. Those players are engaged. They are trying to figure these things out. They are talking amongst each other. The only thing that stopped is the GM flapping his gums. And that's a great thing, right? GM, you can sit back, you can listen for a change, you can take a sip of your drink. It's great. So like I said at the top of the episode, this is the highest form of role-playing. This is your players being engaged. This is the players playing. It's not GM-driven, it's player-driven, and that's the way it should be, at least in my mind, around my table. As a player, as a GM, that's how I like things to be. That's how I see it. Clearly, there's people who disagree. Roomslinger, I'm looking at you. I would love to hear from you. Jason, you're the one that made the comment originally. I'd love to hear from you. Anybody out there, if you disagree with me, heck, even if you think I'm right, I'll take the props. Let me know. Feedback at dekahedron.com, spelled dekahedron with a K. If you're on YouTube, just leave the comments below. There's the feedback line, which is 562 RPG cast. All that information is up on the screen right now. If you're on YouTube, it's in the show notes. If you're listening to the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. I would love to know what you think about this. I think I made it pretty clear that these things are not halting the game, at least in my mind. Thanks for watching and or listening. And until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye. Hi friends, I'm Joe, and this is episode number 178 of the Dekahedron RPG. Back in 2025. Because if you hand it to them to read, it brings the game to a